welcome back. If you just joined us, you're watching the news at 10 on Channels Television, coming to you live from Lagos. A reminder of our major stories. Senate suspends Senator Ali Ndume for 6 months for allegedly bringing Senate Presidents Bukola Saraki, Senator Dino Melaye and the institution to disrepute. Senate resolves to investigate remarks by Professor Ishe Sage describing some senators as questionable characters. Sage insists Senate has no power to summon him. Minister of Information Lai Mohammed offers assurance of efforts to resolve frosty relationship between the executive and the legislature. And UK Prime Minister Theresa May formally begins process of leaving the European Union. For more on our top stories tonight and others, please visit our website channelstv.com and youtube.com/channelsweb. You can also watch us on the go on your mobile device. Log on to m.channelstv.com or download the Channels TV app for Android, iOS and Windows phones from their respective stores. Having the Channels TV and Channels 24 app will give you access to news and updates. You also have the Eyewitness feature, so you too can be part of the news. Just install the app, then tap and swipe to reveal the Eyewitness menu and follow the instructions to share those pictures, videos or news of happenings around you. Speaking of which, let's take a look at some of the pictures you sent into Eyewitness portal. I begin with this video from India showing people whom our Eyewitness reporter says are African students protesting against what they call false accusation of 5 Nigerian students. According to him, the students are accused of kidnap, poisoning and murder of an 18-year-old Indian. They're asking Nigerian and other African leaders to speak up for them to stop the maltreatment being meted out to them by some Indians. Next is this photo from Boko in Benue State showing a large number of young people who, according to our Eyewitness reporter, are intending candidates of the Unified Tertiary Matriculation Examination waiting to be registered. Our next image is from Oshodi in Lagos showing a dilapidated school structure. Our Eyewitness reporter who sent in this report says the building has been in this state since 2015. He appeals for early intervention of government before this becomes a death trap. Still on infrastructure is this picture from Edipie in Bayelsa State showing a road which our Eyewitness reporter says has assumed this state because of the communal efforts of residents. He, however, asked the state government to make the road more motorable. Our journey ends in Magboro in Ogun State, where we see billowing smoke, which our Eyewitness reporter says is from a factory. He raises the concern of the danger this portends for residents in the short and long term. Thanks for sending in those pictures, and please note that you too can report events as they happen around you. In other news now, in an effort to revamp the federal fire service across the country, the Federal Executive Council has approved the procurement of 15 fire trucks at the cost of 403 million naira out of the 2016 budget. Briefing State House correspondents after the council meeting, the Minister of Interior, Abdurrahman Dambazau, decried a situation where there are only 2 functional fire vehicles in the Federal Capital Territory. The Council also approved the ratification of the agreement on the establishment of the West African Tax Administration Forum, which, according to the Minister of Finance, is a platform to promote cooperation among West African tax authorities. The House of Representatives is set to summon the ministers and other officials in charge of pensions in the country over claim that the federal government has over 302 billion naira outstanding liability to pensioners in the country. The Speaker of the House of Representatives, Honorable Yakubu Dogara, said this when the President of the Nigerian Union of Pensioners, Dr. Abel Afolayan, led his colleagues to meet with the lawmakers. Our correspondent, Larry Lassisi, reports.
Members of the Nigerian Union of Pensioners arriving at the House of Representatives. They had to meet with the Speaker and leadership of the House. The President of the Union appealed to the House for help to ensure that sufficient funds are included in the 2017 budget for pensions.
Government needs to ensure that pensioners are paid as at when due, especially considering the fact that these old people have used their youthful days to serve this country meritoriously. Now that it is the paid back time, the country should not fail them. But they are failing us.
Responding, the Speaker said people who serve the country for years must not be treated the way pensioners are being treated.
These are even some of those things that make corruption to thrive in society, where people who have been entrusted with public funds, believing that by the time you leave this office you are forgotten, they decide to say, okay, let me see if I can help myself to wait for the rainy days.
He said the House will meet with the ministers and officials in charge of pension matters in the country to discuss the matter and find a way forward.
Let them come and take the center stage. We yield the floor to them through the floor. Tell Nigerians what they have done to ensure that in 2017 we get out of this mess. Whether it is through the instrumentality of the budget, or by intervention from service-wide vote, or whatever.
The Speaker observed that President Muhammadu Buhari has assisted state governments with bailout for salaries and pensions and promised to meet with him on funds for federal pensioners. Lanre Lasese, Channels Television News.
Meanwhile, President Muhammadu Buhari has sent the names of 2 ministerial nominees representing Kogi and Gombe states to the Senate for confirmation. The nominee representing Kogi State is Mr. Stephen Ocheni, who is replacing the late Minister of State for Labour, James Ocholi, who died last year in a car accident. The second nominee from Gombe State, Mr. Sulaiman Hassan, is replacing the immediate past Minister of Environment, Amina Mohammed, who was appointed the Deputy Secretary General of the United Nations. And here's Ivy Clem with more on the news at 10 from our studios in Abuja. Hi, Ivy.
Hello, Amarachi. A federal high court sitting in Abuja has granted bail to the National Commandant of the Peace Corps of Nigeria, Mr. Dixon Akko, who is standing trial for alleged money laundering and operation of an unlawful paramilitary organization. Ruling on the bail application filed by counsel to Mr. Akko, Justice John Soho granted bail to the defendant in the sum of 10 million naira with one surety who must possess landed property within Abuja. The Incorporated Trustees of Peace Corps of Nigeria, charged as the second defendant, was also granted bail in the sum of 20 million naira. Lawyers to the federal government and the defendants expressed their opinions on the verdict.
What took place today is purely arraignment. And now the trial will now fully commence after arraignment. The bail came up, we opposed, the court granted him on conditions. They wanted him to be granted bail on self-recognizance, which means no conditions attached. But based on our own opposition, the court saw reasons why conditions must be attached. And in fulfillment of those conditions, definitely certain steps need to be taken, which means
the ruling was very fair. It was okay. It meets the interest of justice. On our part, for the defense, we are comfortable with it. That is what I can say.
Issues of disability rights and social inclusiveness have brought together a group of physically challenged persons who have staged a protest at the National Assembly to demand the passage of the Discrimination Against Persons with Disabilities Bill. They explained that if Nigeria must become a truly global force in the Comity of Nations, it must respect and protect the rights of its physically challenged population. Our correspondent Ajiri Ngalale reports.
In pursuit of equality and freedom from socio-economic exclusion, disabled persons, some deaf, some blind, and some handicapped, are marching to the National Assembly to demand the passage of the National Disability Bill for presidential assent.
The placards reveal motivation. Exhausting these physically challenged protesters are the heavy flows of the Abuja heat. Disabled yet able to endure, they march with unanimity of purpose. Arriving at the National Assembly, a letter of legislative inputs is submitted to Senate President Bukola Saraki by proxy.
The Senate President. For example, access to infrastructures will have inclusive education, special education will be discouraged, will have inclusive transport, inclusive mobility, inclusive health, inclusive employment.
Two senators meet the group on behalf of the Senate President.
Now let me thank you on his behalf, on behalf of the Nigerian President of the Nigerian Senate, for not allowing your disability to even affect your ability to come out here today.
Senator John Eno assures that the President will assent to legislation once passed.
We do not look at the fact that whatever is going on now is going to have any effect at all in terms of an assent to any of the bills that is passed by the National Assembly that affects disabled people.
For these disabled protesters, living in relative exclusion can no longer be tolerated as the status quo in a country seeking to become a force to be reckoned with in the Comity of Nations. Ajuri Ngilale, Channels Television News.
In another demonstration today, workers of the Ministry of Information also protested against what they described as the ministry's negligence of staff welfare. The protesters, who gathered in front of the Radio House in Abuja, enumerated their grievances and asked the presidency to intervene. The workers have been protesting over the issue since the tenure of the former minister Labaran Maku and promised not to stop till the demands are met. In his reaction, the Minister of Information, Mr. Lai Mohammed, explained the lack of funds is largely responsible for the lingering problems.
Well, it's not unusual for a union to call for removal of ministers. And I think that's any minister should expect that. But they are complaining about welfare, which I know very well, But you see, there's only that much which government can do within the available resources. And as much as we sympathize with the situation, the economy is simply not healthy enough to accommodate what used to be accommodated in the past. That is the honest truth. And if anybody is concerned and worried about the expenditure in my ministry, I think you can go and check, and it's very open. We've appealed to them several times, but we met a culture that we cannot sustain. I think that is the honest truth, and we appeal to them. If and when the economy improves, we'll definitely, look at some of the grievances that are genuine and that we can cope with. But right now, to generalize that we do listen to their complaints. They meet with the permanent secretaries, they meet with the various directors. But then, if the resources are simply not there, then nothing we can do. And as much as it affects them, it affects us also.
When the news at 10 returns, Debt Management Office lists over 2 billion naira FGN savings on the Nigerian Stock Exchange. That's on Business News. Stay with us.